UN sanctions, imposed by the Eritrean people or by the leaders and powerful. The United Nations sanctions on Eritrea, in place from 2009 to 2018, were explicitly designed to target the country's leaders and powerful officials. Not the Eritrean people. The international community's goal was to pressure the government to change its behavior by restricting its military capabilities and the personal finances and travel of its leadership. Why were sanctions imposed? The UN Security Council enacted sanctions for two primary reasons related to the actions of the Eritrean government. Alleged support for armed groups. The main justification was the accusation that Eritrea was providing political, financial, and logistical support to armed groups in Somalia, particularly Al-Shabaab. This was seen as a direct threat to peace and stability in the Horn of Africa. Border dispute with Djibouti. Eritrea was also condemned for its refusal to withdraw troops from a disputed border area with Djibouti and for not engaging in diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully. Who and what was targeted? The sanctions were intentionally targeted or smart sanctions, meaning they were not a comprehensive blockade on the entire country's economy. Instead, the measures focused specifically on arms embargo. This prohibited any country from selling or supplying weapons and military equipment to Eritrea and banned Eritrea from exporting arms. The aim was to limit the government's ability to wage war or support other armed factions. Travel bans. Key political and military leaders in Eritrea were put on a no-fly list, preventing them from traveling internationally. Asset freezes. The financial assets and economic resources belonging to designated individuals in the Eritrean leadership, as well as certain government and private entities, were frozen. This was meant to cut off the flow of money used for destabilizing activities. The intended target versus the broader impact. The clear intent of the UN was to penalize the decision-makers in the Eritrean government and military without subjecting the general population to widespread economic hardship. The Eritrean government, however, consistently denied the accusations and portrayed the sanctions as an unjust attack on the nation as a whole. 1. It used the sanctions as a tool to rally nationalist sentiment and often blamed them for the country's economic problems, many of which existed prior to the sanctions. While the measures were not aimed at the general public, it is difficult to completely separate the impact. The international isolation and the government's own domestic policies likely had a more significant effect on the daily lives of ordinary Eritreans than the specific UN sanctions themselves. Some analysts argue that the sanctions had a weak economic impact because the government